The key didn't work. I stood there in the rain, my duffel bag getting soaked, staring at the brass key that had opened my front door for 8 years, the same key that now turned uselessly in a lock that had been changed while I was gone. Well, isn't this just perfect? I muttered, shaking water from my hair. A month training new recruits at Fort Braxton, and I come home to find myself locked out of my own house like some deadbeat ex-boyfriend. The intercom crackled to life before I could even press the button. "Don't make a scene, Cole." Fiona's voice carried that familiar tone of superiority that had been grating on me for months before I left. "I've moved on. I want a divorce." Moved on? She moves faster than my squad on a live fire drill. Moved on to what, exactly? I kept my voice level, though my jaw was clenched tight enough to crack teeth. "And since when do you change the locks on our house without telling your husband?" "It's not our house anymore. I had the lease transferred to my name only. You can pick up your things tomorrow when I'm at work." The intercom went silent. I stood there for a moment, letting the rain soak through my jacket while I processed this. 8 years of marriage, and she locks me out like I'm some stranger. The tactical part of my mind, the part that had kept me alive through 2 tours and made me one of the best infantry instructors in the state, started clicking into gear. If Fiona wanted to play games, she'd picked the wrong opponent. I walked around to the building's service entrance, where I knew Security Steve would be nursing his 3rd coffee of the evening shift. Steve was a good guy, ex-Navy, and we'd shared enough stories about military life that he actually respected me, unlike most of the people in Fiona's social circle. "Hey, Cole!" Steve looked surprised to see me. "Thought you weren't due back until next week." "Change of plans. Listen, Steve, I've got a problem. Fiona changed the locks while I was gone, and I need to get some of my things." Steve's expression shifted to uncomfortable sympathy. "Ah, man. That sucks, but you know I can't just let you in if she says no." I reached into my bag and pulled out a bottle of Jameson I'd picked up at the airport. "I'm not asking you to break any rules. I'm asking you to show me the security footage from the past month. As a resident of this building, I have a right to see who's been coming and going, especially if my wife is claiming I don't live here anymore." Steve looked at the bottle, then at me, then back at the bottle. "Well, I guess that's not technically against regulations." 20 minutes later, I was staring at a month's worth of security footage on fast forward, and my suspicions were confirmed in the worst possible way. Night after night, Fiona brought the same man home. Tall, thin, wearing expensive suits that probably cost more than I made in a month training recruits. "You know who that is?" I asked Steve, pausing on a clear shot of the guy's face. "Grant something. Lorne, I think. He's some hotshot lawyer at your wife's firm. Real piece of work. Talks to me like I'm furniture." Grant Lorne. I'd heard the name before. Fiona had mentioned him a few times, always with a little too much enthusiasm about how brilliant and successful he was. The footage told the whole story. Grant showing up around 8 p.m., leaving the next morning. Sometimes he'd be wearing my clothes. I could see my favorite Georgetown sweatshirt on him in one clip. The bastard was prancing around in my house, wearing my clothes, sleeping in my bed. "Can you burn this to a disk for me?" I asked Steve. "Already on it," he said, ejecting a DVD from the computer. "For what it's worth, man, I never liked the guy. And your wife, well, she's been treating the staff pretty badly since you left, like we're all beneath her now." I pocketed the disc and headed back out into the rain. Time to make some phone calls. The first call was to my oldest friend, Barb, who ran Murphy's Tavern downtown. If you wanted to know anything about anyone in this city, Barb was your source. She'd been collecting gossip and secrets for 20 years behind that bar. "Cole, you're back early. How'd the training go?" "It went fine. Listen, Barb, I need some information about Grant Lorne. Lawyer, works at Hartwell, Crane & Associates." There was a pause. "Oh, honey, you found out." "Found out what?" "About him and Fiona. It's been all over town for weeks. I'm sorry, Cole, I wanted to call you, but… But what? But Fiona made it pretty clear that anyone who talked to you about it would be cut off from her little social circle. And you know how some people are about that kind of thing. My grip tightened on the phone. What exactly has she been saying? That you two were having problems, that you were controlling and jealous, that she needed to find someone who understood her ambitions. Barb's voice was gentle but firm. For what it's worth, nobody who actually knows you bought that crap. And Grant? Smug as hell about it. Been bragging to anyone who'll listen about how he upgraded from his ex-wife to a real woman like Fiona. Makes me sick. I thanked Barb and hung up, my mind already working through the implications. Fiona hadn't just cheated on me. She'd been running a public relations campaign to make herself look like the victim and me look like the bad guy. Meanwhile, her lover was treating our relationship like some kind of trophy conquest. They wanted to play dirty? Fine. But they'd just declared war on someone who'd spent the last 15 years learning how to win fights. The next morning, I was waiting outside the building when Fiona left for work. She looked surprised to see me, then annoyed. I told you to come by when I wasn't here. Change of plans. We need to talk. There's nothing to talk about. I've already contacted a lawyer. Let me guess. Grant's helping you with that? Her face flushed, but she kept her chin up. My personal relationships are none of your business anymore. Actually, they are, since we're still married and you've been using our joint accounts to wine and dine your boyfriend. I have every right to use that money. It's half mine. Had, I corrected. You had every right. Past tense. I pulled out my phone and showed her the screen. Funny thing about joint accounts. Either party can freeze them, especially when there's evidence of adultery. Her face went white. You can't do that. Already did. As of 8 a.m. this morning, every account with both our names on it is frozen pending divorce proceedings. Your credit cards, the car payment, the utilities for this place, all of it. You bastard! How am I supposed to live? I hear Grant makes good money. Ask him. I turned to walk away, but her voice stopped me. This isn't over, Cole. You think you're so smart, but you have no idea who you're messing with. Grant has connections. He can make your life very difficult. I turned back to face her, and for the first time since I'd gotten home, I smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. Sweetheart, I've been shot at by people a lot scarier than some pencil-necked lawyer. If Grant wants to make this difficult, he's welcome to try. But he might want to ask around about what happened to the last guy who tried to intimidate me. The truth was, no one had tried to intimidate me recently. But Fiona didn't need to know that. Let her imagination fill in the blanks. As I walked away, I could hear her frantically dialing her phone, probably calling Grant to come rescue her. Good. Let them panic a little. I had work to do. Murphy's Tavern was exactly what you'd expect from a place that had been serving the same neighborhood for 40 years. Dark wood, worn leather, and the kind of atmosphere that made people want to share their secrets. Barb had inherited it from her father and turned it into the unofficial information exchange for half the city. I found her restocking the bar for the lunch crowd, her graying hair pulled back in its usual ponytail. She looked up when I walked in and immediately poured 2 cups of coffee. You look like hell, she said, sliding 1 cup across the bar to me. Feel worse, but I'm working on fixing that. Good. What do you need to know? I pulled out the DVD Steve had made for me. First, I need you to notarize something for me. You're still certified, right? Sure am. What are we notarizing? An affidavit stating that this security footage is authentic and unaltered. I'd typed it up that morning on my laptop. I'm going to need it for court and possibly for other purposes. Barb read through the document, watched a few minutes of the footage on the bar's computer, and stamped it with her official seal. There you go. Legal as Sunday morning. What else? Tell me everything you know about Grant Lorne. Barb settled in with her coffee. This was her favorite part, sharing information. Grant Michael Lorne, 38 years old, originally from Connecticut. Joined Hartwell, Crane, and Associates about 5 years ago as a junior partner. Specializes in corporate law, specifically mergers and acquisitions. Makes decent money, but not as much as he likes people to think. Married? Divorced. Nasty split about 3 years ago. His ex-wife got the house, half his assets, and custody of their daughter. Word is, she caught him cheating with a paralegal. Interesting. A pattern of behavior. What about his reputation at the firm? Mixed. He's good at what he does, but he's not well liked. Too ambitious, too willing to step on people to get ahead. There are rumors that he's been trying to position himself for senior partner, but the old guard doesn't trust him. And his relationship with Fiona? Barb's expression darkened. That's where it gets ugly. From what I hear, he approached her specifically because she was married to a military guy who was often away. Easy target, lonely wife, all that. But it's more than just an affair. What do you mean? He's been coaching her, teaching her how to play the victim, how to position herself for the divorce to get maximum sympathy and minimum blame. There's talk that he's even been helping her move assets around to hide them from you. My coffee cup cracked in my grip. Moving assets around? That was fraud, plain and simple. Are you sure about that? Sure enough. My source is someone who works at their firm, says Grant's been bragging about how he's going to set Fiona up for life while making sure you get nothing. I set the broken cup down carefully. Who's your source? Can't tell you that. But I can tell you they're reliable and they don't like what they're seeing. Fair enough. Barb had her rules about protecting sources, and I respected that. What about Fiona's social circle? How are they reacting to all this? That's complicated. Some of them are buying her sob story about being trapped in an unhappy marriage with a controlling husband. Others are keeping their distance because they know it's bullshit. But here's the thing. Most of them are more afraid of being cut out of the group than they are of doing the right thing. Meaning they'll go along with whatever version of events keeps them in Fiona's good graces, at least until the divorce is final. After that, all bets are off. I nodded. That matched what I knew about Fiona's friends. They were a shallow, status-obsessed bunch who cared more about appearances than loyalty. One more thing, Barb said, leaning forward conspiratorially. Grant's got a weakness. He's got a gambling problem. Poker, specifically. There's a high-stakes game that runs out of the back room at Romano's restaurant every Thursday night. He's been losing big there for months. How big? Big enough that he's been borrowing money from some very unpleasant people to cover his debts. This was getting better and better. A cheating lawyer with gambling debts and a pattern of targeting married women. Grant Lorne was starting to look less like a threat and more like a target-rich environment. Thanks, Barb, I owe you one. You don't owe me anything. Just promise me you'll be smart about whatever you're planning. Always am. She gave me a look that said she didn't believe that for a second, but she didn't argue. My next stop was my training facility across town. I'd built the business from nothing over the past 5 years, teaching tactical skills to law enforcement, security personnel, and the occasional civilian who wanted to learn how to protect themselves. It wasn't glamorous work, but it paid well and kept me sharp. I found my best student, Jace Morrison, working through a close-quarters combat drill in the main training room. Jace was 26, former Marine, and one of the few people I'd met who had both the physical skills and the mental discipline to excel at this kind of work. Cole, you're back early. How'd it go at Braxton? Good training, bad homecoming. I need a favor. Jace stopped mid-drill and gave me his full attention. What kind of favor? I filled him in on the situation with Fiona and Grant, leaving out some of the more sensitive details. Jace listened without interruption, his expression growing darker as I talked. So, what do you need from me? Surveillance, mostly. I need to know Grant's routines, where he goes, who he talks to, and I might need backup for some of the more direct approaches I'm planning. You mean the kind of backup that helps you stay out of jail? Exactly that kind. Jace grinned. Count me in. This guy sounds like a real piece of work. He is. But we're going to be smart about this. Everything we do has to be legal and defensible. I'm not going to prison because some lawyer thinks he can steal my wife and my money. Understood. When do we start? Tonight. I want to know everything about Grant Lorne's life by the end of the week. As Jace headed out to begin surveillance, I sat down at my desk to plan the next phase of my campaign. Fiona and Grant thought they were dealing with some dumb soldier who would roll over and accept whatever scraps they threw at him. They were about to learn how wrong they were. The phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. The caller ID showed Fiona's number. What? Cole, we need to talk. This freeze on the accounts is ridiculous. I have bills to pay. So pay them. With what money? You've locked me out of everything. Not my problem. You should have thought about that before you decided to redecorate our bedroom with your boyfriend. There was a long pause. When she spoke again, her voice was different. Harder, more calculated. Fine. If that's how you want to play this, I can play too. Grant says I have grounds for a restraining order based on your threatening behavior yesterday. What threatening behavior? I had a conversation with my wife about our joint finances. You intimidated me, made me fear for my safety. Grant says that's enough for a judge to issue a temporary order, which would mean you'd have to stay away from me in the house. I laughed. Go ahead and try it. I'd love to see you explain to a judge why you changed the locks on our house while I was out of town on business, especially when I show them the security footage of you bringing your boyfriend home every night. Another pause. You're bluffing. Am I? Why don't you test that theory? She hung up without another word. I leaned back in my chair, feeling better than I had since I'd gotten home. Fiona was starting to realize that I wasn't going to be the easy target she'd expected. And if she was talking to Grant about restraining orders, it meant they were getting desperate. Desperate people make mistakes. And I was counting on Grant Lorne to make a big one very soon. By Thursday evening, Jace had compiled a comprehensive dossier on Grant Lorne's daily routine. The man was a creature of habit. Coffee at the same place every morning, lunch at the same restaurant, and every Thursday night, the poker game at Romano's that Barb had mentioned. He's not as smart as he thinks he is, Jace reported, as we sat in my office reviewing the surveillance photos. Leaves his car unlocked half the time, uses the same PIN for everything, and he's got a mouth like a broken faucet when he's had a few drinks. What kind of things does he say when he's drinking? Mostly bragging about his conquests. Your wife's not the first married woman he's targeted, and from the way he talks, she won't be the last. He's got a whole system worked out. System? Yeah. He identifies wives whose husbands travel for work, gets close to them through professional connections, then moves in when the husband's away. He's done it at least 3 times that I know of. My hands clenched into fists. Fiona wasn't just a cheating wife. She was a mark in some predator's game. There's more, Jace continued. He's been talking about how he's going to set her up for life once the divorce goes through. Apparently, he's convinced her to transfer some assets into accounts he controls for safekeeping during the divorce proceedings. That's fraud. Yeah, but proving it might be tricky. Unless what? Unless we could get him to admit it on tape. I smiled. I like the way you think. What did you have in mind? The poker game. He gets drunk, he gets talkative, and he loves to brag. If we could get someone in there with a wire... Too risky. If we get caught, it could compromise everything else we're planning. Then what? I thought about it for a moment, then pulled out my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found the number I was looking for. Ms. Denton? This is Cole Mercer. I have some information I think you might find interesting. Margaret Denton was the ethics officer at Hartwell, Crane & Associates. I'd met her once at a firm party, and she'd struck me as someone who took her job seriously. More importantly, she was one of the few people at the firm who didn't seem impressed by Grant's smooth-talking routine. 20 minutes later, I was sitting in her office with the security footage and Jace's surveillance report spread out on her desk. "This is very disturbing," she said after reviewing everything. "But I have to ask, what's your motivation for bringing this to me?" "My motivation is that my wife is being manipulated by a predator who's using his position at your firm to facilitate fraud and adultery. I want him stopped." "And you're sure this footage is authentic?" I handed her the notarized affidavit from Barb. "Completely authentic. I can also provide you with the contact information for the building's security company if you want independent verification." Ms. Denton studied the documents for several minutes, then looked up at me with a grim expression. "Mr. Mercer, I want you to know that if these allegations prove true, Mr. Lorne will face serious consequences, not just from the firm, but potentially from the State Bar Association." "I understand, and I want you to know that I'm not looking for revenge against the firm, just against the man who's destroying my marriage." "I appreciate that. Give me 48 hours to conduct a preliminary investigation. I'll be in touch." As I left the law firm, I felt a grim satisfaction settling over me. Grant Lorne was about to discover that actions have consequences. But I wasn't done yet. That evening, I drove to the upscale neighborhood where Grant lived. His apartment building was the kind of place that screamed, "I make more money than you," all glass and steel and pretentious architectural flourishes. I parked across the street and waited. At 9:30 p.m., Grant's BMW pulled into the building's garage. At 9:45, lights came on in a third-floor apartment. At 10:15, a pizza delivery car arrived. Perfect. I walked into the building's lobby like I belonged there, nodding to the doorman as I headed for the elevator. The key to getting past building security is confidence. Act like you're supposed to be there, and most people won't question it. Grant's apartment was 3B. I knocked on the door and waited. "Who is it?" Grant's voice, muffled by the door. "Pizza delivery. You ordered extra cheese?" The door opened, and Grant stood there in his bathrobe, looking confused. "I didn't order extra." He stopped talking when he saw my face. "Hello, Grant. We need to talk." He tried to close the door, but I was already pushing past him into the apartment. It was exactly what I'd expected. Expensive furniture, pretentious art, and no personality whatsoever. "You can't just barge in here. I'll call the police." "Go ahead. I'd love to explain to them why you've been committing adultery with my wife and helping her hide marital assets." Grant's face went pale. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Sure you do. You're Grant Lorne, serial home wrecker and amateur financial criminal. You target married women whose husbands travel for work, seduce them, then convince them to hide money from their spouses. It's a neat little scam, except this time you picked the wrong mark." "You're crazy. Fiona came to me. She said you were abusive and controlling. And you believed her because it fit your narrative. Poor little wife, trapped with the mean soldier husband. Made you feel like a real hero, didn't it?" Grant backed toward his kitchen, probably looking for a weapon or a phone. I let him go. I wanted him scared, not cornered. "Here's what's going to happen," I continued, settling into his expensive leather chair. "You're going to stop seeing my wife. You're going to return any money she's given you to hide from me, and you're going to disappear from her life completely." "And if I don't?" I smiled. "Then I'm going to destroy you. Professionally, financially, and personally. I've already started, actually. How do you think your bosses are going to react when they find out you've been using the firm's resources to facilitate adultery and fraud?" "You can't prove anything." "Can't I?" I pulled out my phone and showed him a photo of him entering my building with Fiona. Security cameras are wonderful things. So are notarized affidavits. So are ethics officers who take their jobs seriously. Grant's face went from pale to gray. "What do you want?" "I told you what I want. The question is, are you smart enough to give it to me without forcing me to get unpleasant?" "This is extortion." "No, this is a friendly conversation between two men about the future of my marriage. Extortion would be if I threatened to send copies of that security footage to your ex-wife's divorce attorney, or to the State Bar Association, or to the IRS to report your unreported gambling income. Grant slumped into a chair, the fight going out of him. How did you know about the gambling? Grant, I've spent 15 years learning how to gather intelligence on people who want to eliminate me. You think I can't figure out the secrets of some small-town lawyer with delusions of grandeur? We sat in silence for a moment while Grant processed the situation. I could see him running through his options and realizing he didn't have any good ones. What exactly do you want me to do? Break up with my wife, tonight. Tell her it was a mistake, tell her you're not ready for a relationship, tell her whatever you want, but end it. And the money? What money? You know what money. The accounts she set up. Bingo. He'd just admitted to helping Fiona hide assets. Transfer it back to the joint accounts where it belongs, all of it? Fine. But this has to be the end of it. No more threats, no more harassment. As long as you stay away from my wife and return the money, you'll never see me again. I stood up to leave, then turned back to face him. Oh, and Grant, if you ever try to contact Fiona again, or if you ever target another married woman, I'll finish what I started tonight, and next time, I won't be nearly as polite. As I walked back to my car, my phone buzzed with a text message from Fiona. Grant just broke up with me. What did you do? I typed back, nothing illegal. We'll talk tomorrow. Phase 1 was complete. Grant was neutralized, and the money would be returned. But I wasn't finished yet. Fiona had betrayed our marriage and tried to steal from me. She deserved consequences too, and I was just getting started. The next morning, I was waiting at our usual coffee shop when Fiona arrived. She looked like she'd been crying all night, which probably meant she had been. Her perfectly styled hair was a mess, her makeup was smeared, and she was wearing the same clothes from yesterday. You snake, she said, sliding into the booth across from me. How could you do that to me? Do what? Have a conversation with your boyfriend about the ethics of adultery? You threatened him. He was terrified. Good. He should be terrified. He's been committing fraud, and now he knows there are consequences for that. Fiona's eyes flashed with anger. Fraud? What are you talking about? The money, Fiona. The accounts you set up with Grant's help to hide assets from me during the divorce. That's fraud, and it's a felony. Her face went white. I don't know what you mean. Sure you do. Grant already confessed. He's transferring the money back to our joint accounts as we speak. Apparently, when faced with the choice between protecting you and protecting himself, he chose himself. Shocking, I know. I pulled out my phone and showed her the bank app. Sure enough, $47,000 had been transferred back into our joint account that morning. How much did he convince you to steal from me, Fiona? 50,000? 60? Did he tell you it was for your own protection? That I'd try to hide it from you? Tears started flowing down her cheeks. He said you'd try to leave me with nothing, that I needed to protect myself. And you believed him instead of talking to me. You were never here. You were always off training someone else's soldiers, leaving me alone for weeks at a time. I was working, building a business, trying to provide for us. Providing for us? You were providing for yourself. Everything was always about your career, your business, your plans. What about what I wanted? I leaned back in the booth, studying my wife's face. 8 years of marriage, and I was finally seeing who she really was underneath all the charm and manipulation. What did you want, Fiona? I wanted a partner, not a roommate who showed up between deployments. I wanted someone who understood my ambitions, who could help me build the kind of life I deserve. The kind of life you deserve, not the kind of life we could build together. That's not what I meant. That's exactly what you meant. And you know what? You're right. You do deserve a certain kind of life. You deserve the life you've chosen. I stood up and dropped a 20 on the table. The divorce papers will be filed on Monday. You can keep the apartment. I've already had my name taken off the lease. You can keep your car. I've transferred the loan to your name only. You can keep your friends, your job, and your precious social status. Cole, wait! I'm not finished. You can keep all of that, but you can't keep me. And you can't keep the money you tried to steal, or the credit cards you've been using to fund your affair, or the joint accounts you've been raiding to pay for your new lifestyle. You can't just cut me off. I have rights. You have exactly the rights the law gives you in a no-fault divorce where adultery can be proven, which, thanks to the security footage and Grant's confession, is not very many. I started to walk away, then turned back one more time. Oh, and Fiona, you might want to find a new job. I hear Hartwell, Crane, and Associates is about to have an opening in their corporate law department. As I walked out of the coffee shop, I could hear Fiona calling my name, but I didn't look back. I was done looking back. My phone rang as I was driving home. The caller ID showed Jace's number. Cole, you need to get down to the training facility. We've got a problem. What kind of problem? The kind that involves 3 of your former friends and a lot of angry shouting. I sighed. I should have known this was coming. When I arrived at the facility, I found Jace standing outside the main entrance with his arms crossed, blocking the door. In the parking lot, 3 men were standing next to a pickup truck, gesturing angrily in my direction. Mike Patterson, Dave Kowalski, and Jim Chen. We'd been friends for over a decade, ever since I'd gotten out of the Army. We'd been hunting together, worked construction together, and spent countless nights at Murphy's Tavern solving the world's problems over beer and whiskey. Now they were here to confront me about my treatment of Fiona. Let me guess, I said to Jace as I got out of my truck. They're here to defend my wife's honor. Something like that. They've been here for about 20 minutes, getting more worked up by the minute. I walked over to where the 3 men were standing. Mike, the unofficial leader of the group, stepped forward. Cole, we need to talk. About what? About what you're doing to Fiona. This isn't right, man. What isn't right? Getting divorced from my cheating wife? She's not cheating, Dave interjected. She's trying to get out of a bad marriage, and you're making it as difficult as possible for her. I stared at him. She's not cheating? Dave, I have security footage of her bringing another man home every night for a month while I was out of town. What would you call that? We call it moving on, Jim said. She told us you 2 have been separated for months, that you've been emotionally abusive and controlling. And you believed her. We've known Fiona for 8 years, Mike said. She's not a liar. But I am? We didn't say that. You didn't have to. You're here, aren't you? Standing in my parking lot, telling me I'm wrong for being angry that my wife committed adultery and tried to steal $50,000 from me. $50,000? Dave looked skeptical. Come on, Cole. You're being paranoid. I pulled out my phone and showed them the bank records. $57,000 to be exact. Transferred to accounts controlled by her boyfriend. He gave it back this morning after I explained the legal consequences of fraud. The 3 men studied the phone screen, their expressions shifting from skeptical to confused. That doesn't make sense, Jim said. Fiona said you were the one hiding money from her. Fiona says a lot of things. The question is, why are you taking her word over mine? Because she came to us crying, Mike said. Because she was scared and alone and needed friends to support her. And because she's prettier than I am, and she tells you what you want to hear. That's not fair, isn't it? How many times over the past 8 years has Fiona paid attention to any of you? How many times has she joined us for drinks, or come to the barbecues, or shown any interest in your lives? The silence stretched out for a long moment. But the minute she needs something from you, suddenly she's your best friend. Suddenly she's the victim, and I'm the villain. She said you threatened her, Dave said, but his voice lacked conviction now. I told her I was freezing our joint accounts until the divorce was finalized. If she considers that a threat, maybe she should ask herself why. Cole, Mike said. We've been friends for a long time. We don't want to choose sides in your divorce. Then don't. But don't come to my place of business and accuse me of abusing my wife when you don't know what you're talking about. So, what are we supposed to do? Just ignore it when a friend asks for help? You're supposed to get the whole story before you pick a side. You're supposed to remember that I've never lied to you, never manipulated you, and never asked you to choose between me and someone else. I looked at each of them in turn. But most of all, you're supposed to act like the friends I thought you were, instead of like strangers who believe gossip over evidence. I started walking toward the building, then stopped and turned back. For what it's worth, I don't blame you for wanting to help someone you thought was in trouble, but I'm disappointed that you didn't trust me enough to ask for my side of the story first. As I walked into the building, I heard Mike call out behind me. "Cole, wait. Let's talk about this." But I was done talking. They'd made their choice and I'd made mine. Jace followed me into my office and closed the door. That was rough. Yeah, well, now I know who my real friends are. What are you going to do? Nothing. They'll figure out the truth eventually, and when they do, they'll have to decide whether they want to apologize or just pretend this never happened. And if they don't figure it out, then I'm better off without them. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "This isn't over. You've made a big mistake." I showed the message to Jace. "Grant? Probably. Looks like our boy isn't as smart as I thought he was. What do you want to do about it?" I deleted the message and put the phone away. "Nothing. Let him make the next move. I'm curious to see how stupid he really is." As it turned out, I didn't have to wait long to find out. Grant Lorne turned out to be every bit as stupid as I'd hoped he would be. The next morning, I woke up to find my truck's tires slashed and asshole spray-painted across the windshield. It was amateur hour, the kind of thing an angry teenager might do, not a supposedly sophisticated lawyer. But it was also a mistake that was going to cost him everything. I called the police first, then Jace, then the insurance company. By the time the cops arrived, I had photos of the damage from every angle, plus security footage from the camera I'd installed outside my apartment building after the first time someone had tried to vandalize my property. The footage clearly showed Grant's BMW pulling up at 3 a.m., Grant getting out with a can of spray paint and a knife, doing the damage, and driving away. His license plate was clearly visible, and the streetlight illuminated his face perfectly. "Well, that's pretty cut and dried," Officer Martinez said as we reviewed the footage. "You know this guy?" "He's my wife's ex-boyfriend. I convinced him to stop seeing her, and apparently he didn't take it well." "Ex-boyfriend? I thought you said you were married." "Still married, but separated. She was having an affair." Officer Martinez nodded sympathetically. "Messy situation. We'll pick him up this morning. Vandalism, criminal mischief, probably harassment too. He's looking at some serious charges." "I appreciate that, officer." As the police drove away, Jace pulled up in his truck. "Damn, Cole, he really did a number on your ride." "Yeah, but he also just handed me everything I need to finish him off." "How so?" "Think about it. He's a lawyer. He knows that vandalizing someone's property is a crime. He knows there are cameras everywhere these days, but he did it anyway, which means he's either incredibly stupid or incredibly desperate. My money's on both. Mine, too. And desperate, stupid people make bigger mistakes. I was right. By noon, Grant had been arrested at his office, in full view of his colleagues and clients. By 2 p.m., the story was all over the legal community's gossip network. By 5 p.m., Margaret Denton was calling me with an update. "Mr. Mercer, I wanted to let you know that Mr. Lorne's employment with our firm has been terminated, effective immediately." "Because of the arrest?" "The arrest was the final straw, but our investigation had already uncovered enough misconduct to justify termination. The ethics violations, the misuse of firm resources, the pattern of inappropriate relationships with clients' spouses, it all adds up to someone we can't continue to employ. I appreciate you letting me know. There's more. We'll be reporting our findings to the State Bar Association. Mr. Lorne is likely to face suspension or disbarment. And his gambling debts. There was a pause. I'm not sure what you mean. Nothing official, Ms. Denton. Just rumors I'd heard. Well, whatever his personal financial situation, it's no longer our concern. Thank you for bringing this matter to our attention, Mr. Mercer. You may have saved us from much more serious problems down the road. After I hung up, I sat back in my chair and allowed myself a moment of satisfaction. Grant Lorne had gone from successful lawyer to unemployed criminal in less than 48 hours. His career was over, his reputation was destroyed, and his gambling debts were about to become a much bigger problem without a steady income to service them. But I still wasn't finished. That evening, I drove to Fiona's apartment building. I knew she'd be home because her car was in the parking garage, and I knew she'd be alone because Grant was sitting in a jail cell waiting for his bail hearing. I didn't go up to her apartment. Instead, I waited in the lobby until she came down to get her mail. She looked terrible. Her hair was unwashed, her clothes were wrinkled, and she had the hollow-eyed look of someone who hadn't slept in days. Cole, what are you doing here? I came to see how you were handling the news about Grant. You mean about his arrest? I know you set him up. I didn't set him up, Fiona. I just gave him enough rope to hang himself with. The decision to vandalize my truck was entirely his own. He was upset. He wasn't thinking clearly. He was stupid, and now he's unemployed, facing criminal charges, and probably going to lose his law license. Was he worth it? Fiona's face crumpled, and for a moment, she looked like the woman I'd married 8 years ago. I never wanted any of this to happen. Yes, you did. Maybe not the criminal charges, but everything else. You wanted the affair, you wanted the drama, you wanted to feel like you were trading up to a better life. That's not true. Isn't it? You could have asked for a divorce. You could have been honest about being unhappy. Instead, you chose to cheat, lie, and steal. Those were your choices, Fiona. I was lonely. You were never here. I was building a life for us. But that wasn't enough for you, was it? You wanted someone else's life. Someone richer, more successful, more sophisticated. Grant understood my ambitions. Grant understood that you were an easy mark, a lonely married woman with access to money and a husband who was conveniently out of town. You weren't his girlfriend, Fiona. You were his victim. She stared at me, tears streaming down her face. I loved him. No, you loved the idea of him. You loved what he represented, escape from a life you'd decided wasn't good enough, but you never actually knew him. And I suppose you think I should come back to you now, beg for forgiveness. God, no. We're done, Fiona. We've been done since the moment you decided that our marriage vows were negotiable. I pulled an envelope from my jacket and handed it to her. Divorce papers. I'm not asking for alimony, and I'm not trying to take anything that's legitimately yours. But I'm also not giving you anything that's legitimately mine. She opened the envelope and scanned the documents. This is very generous. It's fair. Despite everything you've done, I don't hate you, Fiona. I'm just done with you. What happens now? Now you sign the papers. We divide our assets according to the agreement, and we both move on with our lives. And Grant? Grant is no longer your problem, or mine. He made his choices, and now he gets to live with the consequences. I turned to leave, then stopped. For what it's worth, I hope you find whatever it is you're looking for. I just hope you're smarter about it next time. As I walked out of the building, I felt a weight lifting from my shoulders. The anger, the betrayal, the need for revenge, it was all finally gone. Fiona had gotten exactly what she deserved, and so had Grant. Justice had been served, and I was free to move on. My phone buzzed with a text from Jace. Beer at Murphy's? I'm buying. I typed back. On my way. As I drove across town to meet my friend, I realized that for the first time in months, I was actually looking forward to the future. I had my business, my real friends, and my self-respect. Everything else was just details. 3 months later, I heard through Barb that Fiona had moved back to her hometown in Ohio, and that Grant was working as a paralegal at a small firm in another state, having lost his license to practice law. Mike, Dave, and Jim had eventually figured out the truth about what had happened and tried to apologize, but by then I'd realized I was better off without friends who would believe lies over evidence. I never saw Fiona again, and I never wanted to. She'd taught me an important lesson about trust, loyalty, and the difference between the person you marry and the person they become. It was an expensive education, but worth every penny. Some people might say I was too harsh, that I should have tried harder to save my marriage or been more forgiving of human weakness. But I've learned that some betrayals can't be forgiven, and some people don't deserve second chances. Grant Lorne had made a career out of destroying marriages and manipulating vulnerable women. Fiona had chosen to betray 8 years of marriage for the promise of a more exciting life. They'd both gotten exactly what they deserved, and I'd gotten exactly what I needed: my freedom, my dignity, and my peace of mind. In the end, that was worth more than any marriage built on lies, or any friendship based on convenience rather than loyalty. I was finally free to build the life I actually wanted, with people who actually deserved to be in it. And that was the best revenge of all.